What is up, Noah? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Ryan?
Doing pretty good. It's a little snowy outside, feeling good. Um, I'm glad we could get together today. I want to talk about something that I know has been on both of our minds recently because we've been working on some stuff internally for it. But I want to talk about why private equity firms should care about HubSpot.
I love this topic because is being brought up more and more in the ecosystem. Why private equity should be caring about this topic. There is so much to talk about, but why don't you kick us off? Where would you like to begin?
Yeah. So when I think about private equity firms and how they and their portfolio companies could benefit from HubSpot, I think a a major area is speed to value. There's that saying that nobody gets fired for picking Salesforce, uh, and I've seen that a lot. Like I've worked at companies where private equity has come in. They've been like, okay, it's time for you to get a CRM. You're going to get Salesforce. It's overkill for the company. It takes a long time to get set up. It takes a lot of resources to manage and maintain. It's slow to roll out changes. And HubSpot is kind of the direct opposite on that. It's got like world class usability. It's really easy to manage. It's got incredible support and incredible partner ecosystem. I think it just really accelerates the time to value, and that's a huge benefit to both the portfolio company and the private equity firm.
So oftentimes what you see happening, and we've both seen it happen, we both worked at these type of firms before, the private equity comes in and says, hey, we need to create more value. How are we going to do that? We're going to modernize that technology stack. How are we going to do it? Well, we're going to bring in Salesforce because obviously you need a CRM. They go hire that chief revenue officer, all they never worked with the Salesforce. Say, I need Salesforce. I need this reporting. I need these tools. I need everything along the way. And this is what we're going to do. And then 12 months later, that CRO is gone because it took 12 months to get the full value out of the CRM for their sales team. And now we're on to a new CRO. And I think is a common trap that private equity gets into is because they say, well, it's worked before. Everyone has CRM. Everyone has Salesforce. We've seen it before. But what I think a lot of private equity tends to forget or is simply unaware of is that there's other options out there and what happens via HubSpot. And when you think of what you're doing when you acquire one of these organizations is you need to build value fast. So if it takes you 12 months to get a CRM up to speed to actively facilitate your sales process, no, that's an issue. HubSpot, in our experience in working with private equity groups and private equity groups who've recently acquired companies, is they're like, nah, I need to get to speed faster. And that means they're looking for a solution where it doesn't necessarily take 12 months. It takes 3 to 6 months to get up to speed. And I still say 3 to 6 months because you're still talking about process, but once you have that process in place, you're able to essentially translate that into an effective CRM. So speed to value is huge. Getting a world-class CRM up to speed is massive, and also ease of use. I know, Ryan, you've kind of experienced that similar to myself, like organizations and companies who are just slow at it versus using something like HubSpot.
I think that's so in the example we just talked about. It's you're implementing a world-class CRM for the first time. The other area that I see is when people have have overkill on technology. They have a Salesforce or they have a Marketo, and they don't need that much complexity. And something like HubSpot that does 99% of what they need at at the same time, it's going to be faster to get that stuff set up. It's going to be less complex to manage. As an example, we worked with Uber Freight, and they were migrating off of a Marketo and Salesforce stack onto HubSpot. And we heard from them that it cost over $180,000 a year more to have that tech stack than what they ended up paying for with HubSpot. And that's like, talk about instant value creation. If you're freeing up that much money, that pays for the the switch itself. That's the cost of a migration plus a lot that you are then saving.
And you're not giving anything up. That's the other thing I think a lot of organizations fail to recognize is that when you think of something like HubSpot, HubSpot today is way different than HubSpot of 4 to 5 years ago. There may have been a case that no, you can't actually migrate or use HubSpot because it's not going to be able to meet your needs. Well, that's hardly ever the case anymore. HubSpot's a true platform that you're actually able to leverage. So you gave the example of Marketo, you gave the example of savings, and that savings is a huge deal. And in itself, that's a very good reason to make a switch, but also usability. So as we talked about at the top, is it's not just about necessarily the savings that you're most likely going to generate from making a switch to something like HubSpot, but it's also about how fast you're actually going to be able to start leveraging the platform to see a return on investment. So one thing I think that's really important that organizations want to pay attention to is what outcome are you trying to achieve? Like once you have this technology set up, like what is it going to do for your organization? If you have, let's say it takes 12 months to set up something in Salesforce or set up something in Marketo, and it only takes 6 months in HubSpot, how much value are you creating in those additional 6 months of time? And that is something that I think a lot of organizations are beginning to realize that, wow, I can not only get the system set up faster, I'm saving money, it's easier to use, I have faster adoption, but I'm able to start realizing returns on an investment way sooner than if I were to adopt some of these bulkier platforms. So I completely agree with kind of your sentiment, especially with Uber Freight saving all that money. And are you thinking like, one other thing I hear from a lot of people is just the consolidation of their technology and how HubSpot's able to achieve that for them?
Yeah, I think it's not only consolidation of technology because, like I said, you don't need a Marketo and a Salesforce. It's HubSpot is all in one. You have your marketing, your sales, your service, all of it can be in a single platform. You're reducing the amount of integration complexity, the risk of data falling through the cracks. But I think it's not just technology consolidation. If we're talking about a private equity firm, then if all of their portfolio companies are using the same technology, if they're all using HubSpot, that allows the private equity firm to consolidate their vendors. They can have, a couple of go-to technology partners that they rely on that service multiple of their portcos.
Agreed. And now you can start putting together an actual playbook. So when you come into an organization, you know your technology stack, you know your vendors you're going to be working with. You can start actually putting together a playbook for your particular port codes that you're going to be working with at any given time. And HubSpot really gives you a lot of capabilities and a lot of new things coming out for private equity that you'll hear more about over the course of 2025. A little too premature for me to say, but I'll give a hint. They're rolling out the red carpet for all of you private equity groups. And to be able to really integrate and to be able to have a centralized place to be able to consolidate all that information. And I think, Ryan, one of the things we talk about also is data. And, with HubSpot, be able to ingest all that data into something like a data warehouse owned by the private equity group. So you have a much clearer understanding of how your individual portfolio companies are doing is something really cool you can incorporate, or adding a BI tool in addition to that data warehouse that you ended up building out. But I guess from my perspective, there's also some pitfalls that private equity firms should be able to look out for when implementing something like HubSpot, and again, why they should really care about HubSpot in general to avoid these pitfalls.
Yeah, I think as we talked about before, something like Salesforce or Marketo can be overkill because it there's like too much complexity. There's validation rules for all these different things. It makes it really complicated for the end users to actually get stuff done. Um, as HubSpot has become more complex, you're starting to see some of that happen in HubSpot as well. So I think one thing that I see people make the mistake of over engineering their CRM implementation. I'd recommend just keeping things simple. Make sure that it's usable by the end users and that it's scalable. That as you as a private equity firm are helping to grow companies, they can do so within the existing stack, and it will scale with them instead of holding them back.
And I want to add one caveat to that. And this is not for us to simply say, hey, keep it simple, stupid, KISS, as we all like to talk about. But one thing that HubSpot does give you the capability of doing is it's very configurable now. So it can pretty much do whatever you need to get done. And generally, there's phases whenever you're thinking about rolling out a system like HubSpot. You don't necessarily do it all at once. You may get it 80% to where you need to be, roll it out, start making adjustments. And I 100% agree. Don't over customize it, but it does still give you the ability to customize it to your business needs. So when you're working with a really solid partner, they're going to go to help walk you through the best way to deploy it to get the most out of it. And please, by all means, do not skip training. I feel like every time we go into these budgets, we go to these conversations, like everything looks great. Trying to save a few bucks. Why don't we just skip that training on the back end? Oh my God. That's like the most important thing. Adoption and training is the whole reason why we have so many clients we work with on an annual basis where we provide these managed services to help them with training and adoption. Otherwise, what is the point of the system? We just threw everything out the window. It doesn't matter. It took 6 months to get it up and running versus 12 months if you did it through the training. So making sure you're constantly training, new people are coming on board. There's new ways, your business is evolving. You're going to have to make adjustments to your system. And then I think, Ryan, being a director of demand gen, we all know data quality. Oh my God. How often do people fall off and they just stop cleaning their data and making sure it's structured well? I mean, you've seen that more than most.
Oh yeah, I think a huge problem, especially when making a migration from another platform, is companies they're leaving that platform for a reason. They've chosen to leave behind Marketo and move to Salesforce. But then when it actually comes to doing the migration, they do a lift and shift where they bring over all the same processes, all the same data. And when you do that, you also bring all the same problems. Uh, and because of that, I always recommend that companies work with a partner that understands the new system, because you can redesign a lot of those processes. You can clean up your data and configure it in a way that makes sense for the new platform. It's a really good opportunity to do some spring cleaning for not only the data itself, but also how your teams operate and fully leverage that new platform uh, the way that it's intended to be.
And let's not forget HubSpot's Ops Hub. And also, I know they don't talk about Clearbit anymore. It's not a name you mentioned, but their Clearbit acquisition, Breeze AI, and their
Yeah,
ability to
Breeze
clean
Intelligent.
data, Breeze Intelligence. Let's not forget about why private equity should care about HubSpots, because they continue to add hubs that are enabling them to get more done in their business. And a lot of these hubs are actually built from the ground up. So HubSpot's motto hasn't just been acquire and bolt on a different system, kind of like if you think about how Pardot got going and how their different tools got going, they essentially went out and bought something and added it to their tech stack. Where HubSpot is really being built from the ground up, and their acquisitions are really meant for, in my opinion, talent. There's some pretty cool stuff they're going to have coming out around unstructured data. That's going to be leaning more towards probably CDP Lite. Let's keep that on the DL right now for clients. But it'll help you really be able to organize and to give it more like a customer data platform that a CRM sits on top of as time goes on. You see a lot of these tools start building out these capabilities around data management, data quality, and you see HubSpot really focusing on it. And it goes back to one of our conversations at the top, where it's like, well, you want to consolidate your vendors. Well, HubSpot's an all-in-one, and it's all-in-one because if you have it all in one, you're not focused on building all these integrations. Now, that's not to say HubSpot's an ERP. We know it's not an ERP system. You're still going to have to connect it to your NetSuite, whatever ERP you're using. That's normal, but they're making it easier than ever to connect data to your warehouse, your ERP, to wherever that data resides, enabling you to basically leverage and activate that data in HubSpot, which is something really cool that we're seeing. So I wouldn't necessarily sleep on some of these hubs out there that may not seem so sexy like Ops Hub, but it's getting sexier as time goes on.
Ops Hub is truly my favorite hub. If only because it allows you to build additional functionality on top of HubSpot. I mean, if we're talking about a platform being configurable and meeting a business's needs, Ops Hub is what allows you to create new features. We say all the time at Aptitude Aid, if HubSpot doesn't have the feature you need, you can build it. And we see that with, CRM cards, building stuff that looks like it is native within HubSpot on top of the UI. So the end user often doesn't even know it's not a native feature. Um, we we have, the custom coded actions and workflows where you can create automations that do things that out of the box can't be done. It's all kinds of stuff that really brings HubSpot up to parity with those other platforms that quote unquote nobody gets fired for using. Um, so that's like Ops Hub is, I would say, pretty essential if your portfolio companies are of a certain level of maturity. Certainly, if they have an ERP, they are at that level of maturity.
Well, you also saw something really critical that you're hearing from HubSpot: platform. Ops Hub enables it to be a platform, enables you to do the things that you couldn't necessarily otherwise do. So, and I think this is a misconception about HubSpot. Oh, HubSpot's just for marketing. Oh, no. HubSpot, and now you're hearing HubSpot's a CRM. Well, yes, it's a CRM. It enables everything else. It enables marketing, enables sales, it enables service, it enables all the things that you want to be able to do as an organization. You can even accept payments through HubSpot, where they have HubSpot for Commerce. There's a lot of tools out there that I think, as an organization that's trying to, especially if you're private equity, you're looking to save money, you're looking to consolidate, you're looking to be able to improve speed to value, you want to get better adoption, you want to be able to start generating that return on investment sooner or later. HubSpot now has various features and capabilities to do so, and they're rolling them out fast. I mean, Ryan, how often do you look at those product updates? You're like, okay, there was 10 today. That's fantastic. And that just gives you an idea of how much HubSpot's innovating along the way.
Yeah, there are people on LinkedIn whose entire presence is based on just taking LinkedIn or HubSpot's product updates and publishing them as LinkedIn posts and calling it thought leadership. Like that, they do it frequently enough to like build people's careers off of just saying what the new update is. So it's growing fast. But I want to come back to one of your previous points because I think that speed of innovation is also why you can't skip training. Like while you are in the process of implementing HubSpot, new stuff is going to come out, new functionality, and if you are trying to do that yourself, if you're trying to do it with people that aren't native HubSpot users, don't already have that deep experience, then they're going to be setting stuff up in ways that doesn't make sense for the platform. And I think if we're talking about speed to value, if we're talking about implementation time, if we're talking about freeing up your team to have time to do training, then I think that's really where working with a partner becomes absolutely essential.
Yeah, and if you're a private equity group, you don't want to necessarily say, "Hey, I'm gonna work with 10 different partners." That's not going to make any sense for you. You're going to want to look for certain things in a partner that you end up working with. Now, listen, I may be a little biased being part of, being a co-CEO of Aptitude Aid and realizing we are the best in the market, and we absolutely are the best in the market when it comes to technology. We're the number one technical consultancy in the world. That's not just my opinion; that's the opinion of a lot of other people as well. We have data to back that up, but that's a different story. So it requires, I think, if you're private equity, and not to say we're the only one, there's a large ecosystem out there, but really looking at the depth of expertise from your partner. There's a lot of partners out there who have, well, HubSpot experience. Maybe they have some of the certifications, they got some of the accreditations, but all in all, a lot of partners came into the ecosystem as, quote, marketing partners. There's a difference between a marketing agency that does HubSpot and a HubSpot technical consultancy that all they do is focus on setting HubSpot up for their clients and helping them navigate and helping them manage it and helping them get the most out of it, because you got to look at how those teams are structured. And one of the big things when you start looking at how teams are structured is, okay, what's their model for delivery? Do they have project managers? Do they have solution engineers? Do they have delivery leads? Do they have consultants? Do they have developers? How are they structured as teams? Start asking those questions. Is there a team? Because although we're nearly 80 employees at Aptitude 8, we operate as one. So it's not as if one person has all the answers. And that goes back to the thing we talked about earlier, Ryan, where there's so many updates happening every single day. It's impossible for just one person to know about them all. You're essentially leveraging an entire team of individuals. So, I mean, what level of expertise are you at? What level of technical proficiency? And I know, Ryan, you are on the other side. I mean, what should, in your opinion, private equity be looking for when evaluating a HubSpot partner?
Yeah, I think the point you made about a lot of partners starting as marketing agencies and adding on technical consulting services is very true. I think RevOps became a big buzzword, especially when a private equity company is going into a portfolio company. They're not just making changes to the technology stack, they are making changes to processes, but your technology stack needs to support those processes. If you are
Mhm.
revamping the sales process, you need to rebuild how deal stages are automated. So I think over the course of the last few years, as RevOps became more popular and more of like a core function for a business, then the marketing agencies started to see the writing on the wall. There's the rise of AI that's making a lot of their former services, a race to the bottom price wise. And RevOps services became very in demand. But there is definitely a difference in quality between a company whose core competency is technical consulting and a company who is a marketing agency that has one or two people that do technical consulting.
Couldn't agree anymore with that. And you got to start asking questions. If you're a private equity group and you're looking for a partner for your portfolio companies, simply ask them, well, where does most of your revenue even come from? Like, oh, marketing. Well, that should be a sign. And the reason why is because it's a totally different structure of how you're operating these companies. Would you go to a Salesforce implementor and simply say, and they're like 90% marketer and be like, oh, you do a little bit of Salesforce. Want to go ahead and set up my whole entire CRM backend system? Probably not. You're looking for a company who focuses strictly on the technical aspects because that's how you're going to leverage the most value from it. So when you're looking at the expertise of a company in the space, there are companies in the HubSpot ecosystem who do specialize on the technical side of things. So look at, do they have experience with portfolio-wide implementations? Are they aware of all the different growth strategies? Do they have all the accreditations? What's their technical proficiency? Do they have examples of customizing API, CRM cards, custom objects? What's their experience around data migration to make sure it's clean, consistent data that's being pulled across all those systems? What level of experience do they have integrating with the tech that's in your tech stack? You're always going to have a tech stack. You need help integrating with it. And then what level of value do they bring up front? Our team, our revenue team is not just account executives, but we have pre-sales solution architects. So we spend a lot of time with our clients to be able to help understand exactly what their needs are prior to actually digging in. And those are going to be some of the questions you're looking for. What's their level of expertise and what's their solution? We're consultants in the end. Our team and our job is to say it can be done. If so, how are we going to do it? So really evaluate that process, evaluate their discovery planning. How did they do project management? How did they do training, enablement, documentation? Because not all is equal. And what we're finding on this ecosystem, especially, and I know Ryan, you've seen it with me, is that there is a limited talent who knows what we're doing and how to do it. And you got to train that talent up. So you got to have right process, right technology, right training for your own internal teams to be able to deliver a private equity group like you all may be looking for at any given time. And so, I know there's a lot more that private equity firms should be thinking about when they're evaluating their implementation partner. I know I'm missing some. I know you have some more here to share as well.
Yeah, if I had to give one surefire way to evaluate a partner and see if they're worth engaging with for a HubSpot implementation or optimizing the use of HubSpot, I would ask in the sales process to see an example of their documentation because that's going to tell you right away if they have poor documentation, they're doing a poor implementation, They're not setting up your team for success. They're probably setting you up to engage in a managed services agreement that is going to be required to just keep things up and running. With good documentation, that is going to really enable your team to take that handoff of the baton and run with the stuff that was created, those processes that were implemented within HubSpot. And then because HubSpot is easier to use, you don't necessarily need a managed services team if you have internal HubSpot experts.
Correct. And even if you do, one of the things I always talk about the differences between HubSpot and other technologies like Salesforce or Marketo, for every 10 hours that you may spend working with a third party provider, managed service provider, and one of those platforms, for every 10 hours, you may only need 3 hours with the HubSpot firm who's going to be supporting you to be able to do the same work. You still generally want to leverage them in some capacity. It's just not the sheer amount that you'd be for. And one of the reasons why is because your end business users are able to do a lot of work themselves. And a single admin is able to do a lot of things that otherwise would have required a pretty sophisticated admin or developer to be able to do in these other platforms. So that goes back to cost and your total cost of ownership. And one of the reasons why people like HubSpot. But the other thing isn't just total cost of ownership, it's how fast you can make changes as your business evolves.
Yes,
Uh,
totally agree.
yeah, I mean, you've seen it before, Ryan. Like, I mean, what happens when you make changes slow? I mean, it's not like that CEO reaches out to you and is like, come on, man, what's going on here? I mean, maybe a little bit.
I saw this firsthand when I was working with one of my clients, and they uh, were migrating off of a Salesforce stack onto a HubSpot one. And they straight up told us, we were doing a case study with them, and they told us that previously, if they wanted to roll out a new campaign using Salesforce and Marketo, it required like 10 layers of red tape that they had to cut through in order to get a campaign launched, which included several members of their marketing ops team doing pretty basic stuff, like just building workflows that send emails, things like that. After they migrated onto HubSpot, they were able to hand off some of those activities to the marketing team because it was so much easier to do. And that really, not only did that accelerate the time to delivery for campaigns, but it also freed up the operational team to do more value add work.
That's exactly what everyone's looking for. I mean, that should be music to your ears. How to leverage your existing team to get more work done. I mean, so now we're talking about force multiplier. And I think that's a common thing that is not necessarily talked about as much, but technology should be an enabler. It should be a force multiplier for your team. It should enable your team to get more done on their own. And I also think like when you're looking and you're evaluating firms, like one of the things you also want to ask yourself, do they just try and offshore all this work? I mean, it's so easy for a company like us to simply say, hey, we're just going to offshore this work to some developer out in some offshore area, wherever that case may be. I can assure you there's a reason why we don't. We're all US based talent. Now, that being said, ultimately in the world, we're an interconnected world. There's smart people everywhere. I'm not denying that one little bit. But really be mindful when you're looking at the team that you're reaching out to help you support these rollouts and you're saying, hey, I need my team to be able to do a lot of work on their own. Well, make sure the team you're hiring is sophisticated and knows their stuff well enough to be able to deliver great work for you so that your team can take the baton and run with it. And Ryan, I think we have a really cool methodology here that it'd be interesting to share kind of how we approach these type of projects for private equity who are thinking about HubSpot.
Yeah, I know when we are approaching a project, we are not looking at it as like a beginning point and an end point. It's a what we call a now, next, later methodology. So that's how do we create some immediate value in the short term? How do we address those immediate needs? There's a next, which is kind of scaling up, addressing some of the secondary, less urgent needs. And then a later is really like, what does the future state look like? Like, what are your wildest dreams and how do we get there?
Yeah, I mean, and there's always something you're going to want to do. Technology is not static. Heck, we just talked about how there's always new HubSpot product updates. They're going to enable you to do everything better, faster, and easier. That's practically coming out each and every week. So, I mean, those are all the things. There's so many reasons why private equity at this point in time. I get it. HubSpot wasn't there in the beginning. Heck, it used to not be online based CRMs, cloud based CRMs before Salesforce came out. So I'm always down to try something new. There used to be Goldmine back in the day, but we all switched to Salesforce. And now you're seeing the great next migration from Salesforce to HubSpot because there's a newer technology enabling people to do it. And I know a lot of you may be curious, like, hey, but what about AI? All we hear about is Einstein and all the other AI tools, man. Everyone has AI. Everyone is leveraging AI. You are not a CRM platform unless you have AI. Every single CRM you talk to will have AI involved. It's no different than having spell check in a word processor like Google Docs or Microsoft Word. It isn't a Microsoft Word or word processor without spell check. So one thing I want to keep in mind, HubSpot has some really cool AI. We briefly talked about Breeze that has recently been recently announced, and they are putting really some cool things around agents that you're going to be able to start leveraging within HubSpot. Another reason to start taking a closer look at it, because as it's an all-in-one and your data is all consolidated, where you don't have to buy a third-party data tool to consolidate it together, you're going to start being able to leverage all that data to be able to create some really cool things within HubSpot AI. So, like, if a PE firm wants to work with us, Ryan, what do you suggest?
I think the easiest way, go to our website, fill out the contact us form. That's going to allow you to schedule a technical discovery call. As Noah mentioned earlier, we have dedicated solution architects in the pre-sales process. So you're getting some immediate value, some validation of the problem and the solution within the sales process. But also in that discovery call, we're going to work on defining goals and KPIs and what success looks like. And then from there, our sales team will work with you to create kind of a strategic roadmap, identify those immediate needs as well as long-term priorities. So we're aligning on that now, next, and later. And then at the end of that, we're going to provide you with a proposal that has implementation timelines, expected outcomes, as well as what ongoing support would look like after an initial project. And from there, you're able to launch things quickly, efficiently, do it in the right way, and experience really quick impact.
And I don't want to downplay the pre-sale solution architects. They are amazing individuals. I mean, just being on the call with them. So what's going to happen when that AE brings them on the call? It's really about just evaluating those needs and making sure you guys have what needs to get done. That's another differentiator with our firm. We've invested heavily into these individuals, and their entire job is like, how can we make this work for you? As we go through this process, there's invaluable information. It's something we do for all of our clients because, well, ultimately, in the end, we not only have to set you up for success, we also have to set our internal teams up for success. And so the more prep work we do up front, the likely and the higher likelihood of success in the back end. And ultimately, in the end, it's a combination of service plus hospitality. I think of as love, whereby not love in the romantic sense, but I love working with that team. That is what we're striving for. Ken Blanchard used to say raving fans. The new word is now I love that team. No one says raving fans. So love that team is a cooler way of doing it. But it's really combining that combination of not just that expertise of how to get the work done, but also the hospitality along with it. It should be a frictionless process from start to end. You should really be focused more on what those outcomes are going to be, not necessarily the journey to get to those outcomes. Because I don't think anyone raises their hand and says, "I want to build out a CRM today." What they all want is they want the end state of what that CRM is going to do, and our teams work hard to be able to get you there.
Awesome. I completely agree, Noah. Thank you so much for hanging out, chatting about private equity and HubSpot. And I will talk to you again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, Ryan.